Welcome to the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Krause Health, the official partner of Syracuse Athletics, providing the latest technology and expertise in the treatment of stroke and cardiac emergencies. I'm Mike Waters. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by former Syracuse basketball player Howard Triche. I talked with Howard about growing up in Syracuse, how he initially wanted to go away to college, and how he finally decided to go to his hometown school. We talked about his Syracuse career and, of course, the 1987 NCAA championship game. Well, welcome back to another edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast. And today, we've got a guy who I didn't actually cover when he was playing at Syracuse, but I've known him for a long time, and I'm excited to have him on the podcast. Former Syracuse player Howard Triche. Welcome to the podcast, Howard. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, I think you were I'm sure I'm older, so I think you were probably still in school at the time that I played, perhaps. But things are going well.
I don't know that you're older. I just know that I missed you by 2 years when I came up.
Oh, okay.
In 89.
Maybe I just look older.
Yeah. I think I got you by a year or so.
Oh, okay.
So we can trade some old war stories and everything.
I'll let you have that. I'll let you be older.
That's fine. We'll get somebody from the 1966 team in here next time, so I'm younger.
Oh, there you go. You really feel young.
All right. So, one thing I've always wanted to ask you, you're not only a former Syracuse player, but you're a Syracuse native. You went to Corcoran High School. Why did you decide to stay home and play at Syracuse?
What was funny was I always wanted to go away, and it just became, I don't want to say this, the last resort per se. I guess I eliminated the other schools and found that Syracuse was indeed the place that I should play at. I actually verbally committed to Texas A&M, but they had some issues with Shelby Metcalf and then the AD at the time. I think it was Jackie Sherrill. There was something crazy going on at the time between them, and then I never actually, I guess, said it in public or whatever. But I had verbally said, "Hey, yeah, that's the place." I had some family down that way, so I thought it might have been cool to go away. Everybody, they go away. Figure out what you want to do with your life. Go away. And then the next school I visited was St. John's, and that was more impersonal. I found going to New York City and so forth. I found that was a little bit impersonal. They didn't really have the degree program that I wanted. And I would have had to do it independent, like study in a sense to get, and I wasn't prepared for that. And I think the other school I went to was BU, Boston University.
Okay.
That was Rick Pitino was the coach then. And but it kind of really came down with St. John's, Texas A&M, and one other school I can't remember besides Syracuse. And then I just, kind of eliminated them and found myself at Syracuse. I never said I didn't want to go to Syracuse. Coach Band pointed a good thing. Texas A&M wanted me to be point guard. That was when, they had started, point guard being 6'5" or taller because I could handle the ball. But St. John's and Syracuse saw me as the same thing, but, pretty much a 2 or 3 man. And, coach was funny. He said, when I told him about Texas A&M or a point guard, he's like, "You're not a point guard. Come on." He's usually right about most things. So I didn't really see myself as a point guard. I'm more of a, in the trenches kind of guy. I get from playing football for a lot of years. So I don't think I was more of the finesse kind of player that a point guard would typically be. So that's how I got to Syracuse.
You played football. How long did you play it in high school?
Yeah, I stopped my sophomore year. And I stopped playing baseball then too. It just got to be boring. I guess I didn't really like preseason, like August. It was hot, and I just kind of just turned me off. And I think I would have been a great tight end. I played football probably the longest in baseball than I have basketball. I was playing in the streets and in the neighborhood football. I thought it was pretty good tight end and, wide receiver. So, but, I always loved diving for loose balls on the basketball court. That would always bring me back because I would dive at the players and more so than the ball. And that's how you end up with it. They teach you to don't jump in front, dive in front to recover the ball. So that's what I always did. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. So, and what position were you in baseball?
Well, I always pitched, but as I got older, my arm, I don't think I was tall as well as I should as far as pitching. My arm would always be bothering me. Then I played center field, and it was a position that was action. So I thought center field was, and then I ended up moving to first base. And then, baseball got to be really boring. I mean, it's basketball. There's always something going. It was really tough to keep going and practice. And as you go in, up in levels, there's a more commitment to practice. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to commit that kind of practice, either football, basketball, football or baseball that you needed. And then I started, playing more basketball. So it was kind of a process of elimination, just like the schools were, after a while as well. So it's kind of a natural progression. I guess it was more organic. My decisions were than contemplating pros and cons, I guess.
Now, when you decide to go to Syracuse, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means you're in the same recruiting class as Pearl Washington.
Yeah. Well, we weren't up against each other, so. But that was a whole different. We all benefit. Greg and myself and some of the other players recruited and came in. George Papadakis. I believe it was 4 of us. We always laugh and say, "God, he was like our shop steward because he brought us all kinds of stuff that we were able to do. We were the first class really to stay off, stay out of the dorms as freshmen. We were the first class to stay off campus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that was because of Pearl?
That was because of Pearl. That was very easy to put together because, we benefited some other things as well. And from Dwayne being there and it should be, they should have, taken care of. I think he was really the top recruit for coach and in an excitement level standpoint, Dwayne. Pretty funny. It was, and coach sat us down. He said, and I'll see if I get this right. I kind of sometimes screw this up the way he says it is that, you have to remember that I'll treat you fairly, but everyone won't be treated the same. And that was preferencing the Pearl standpoint. One thing a coach does is that, understands the players and, you can't treat everyone the same. You can treat them fairly, but you can't treat everyone the same. I mean, there's rules that, you come in late, if something happens. And, I always carried that over to my professional life too, when managing people. I would share that as well. And I think that was a very important lesson that I took from coach.
What was Pearl like? Maybe off the court back in those days.
He really wanted to have fun, enjoy his time there at Syracuse. Pretty comical. I was his roommate his freshman year. So, but I didn't really see him too much. His family was up all the time. Man, they loved They loved him. They would come up in busloads, and I got to know his family pretty well, and his girlfriend at the time, and I think we're still friends. And now, his brother Beaver was pretty funny. Boy, they would come up, and they would have almost, they would have 50, 60 people come up and have tickets. And that means if we didn't have our parents or something, we wouldn't get tickets. But now, things are a little bit different as far as how they hand out tickets, which is pretty funny, and then the same thing would happen in New York, man. People would come out of the woodworks to have, ask Dwayne for tickets and so forth. And, as every game, he just got to be bigger and bigger. From that stand, always humble. We didn't really talk about basketball too much. Shy guy from Central New York, and outgoing Dwayne. I learned a few things from him, and as things go, and I'm sure we taught each other some things that living in different areas of the state, brought about. So
it must have been wild going to play St. John's at the Garden, or going to the Big East tournament at the Garden with Pearl leading the way.
Yes. Like I said, as he got, his showcase and his confidence grew. I think he always came in with confidence and the ability that he can do, because he had success doing those things, handling the ball. Man, he was faster with the ball than without the ball, and dribbled like inches from the floor. It was pretty spectacular. Anytime he had the ball, it was a lot tougher to catch than without the ball. So it was always just part of his hands. And then going, in St. John's, his girlfriend actually went to St. John's. So, he knew players from there and so forth. So it was always pretty much a battle for him. And he took pride in that and so forth. And we had other players that were from New York as well. So it was, in the time, Big East, that was, those were huge rivals.
While Pearl hits the ground running, and is a sensation basically from the get-go,
mm-hmm.
You had a different experience. Your first 2 years, there were games where you didn't even get in freshman and sophomore year.
I think I had better success actually my freshman year than I did my sophomore year. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly why, the difference in years standpoint, but I had a little bit of problem adapting in the game. I always played well, if it was Empire State games or off season and so forth. It was probably more of the pressure at Syracuse, I think, and relaxing and building confidence between coach and myself. So coach, he probably always had confidence and knew that I could do. It's just me demonstrating that, consistently on the court. And I did contemplate leaving after my sophomore year.
You did?
Yeah. I went to, it's funny, I visited Northeastern. Jim Calhoun was there. He remembered me from 5-star basketball camp. And George Washington University. John Kuster was the coach. He was actually the assistant at BU when I visited, and he played at North Carolina, and he went on and coached at, I think he coached the Bulls. So it really actually, I was pretty much leaning to go to George Washington. I thought that was a great school, and, I had definitely a chance to play and so forth. But what happened was Syracuse at the time, we would, every 4 years or somewhere around there, the schools were allowed to go overseas and play. So that just happened to be the year that Syracuse was going overseas, and I hadn't made a decision, and, it was starting to be into August, and school was going to be starting up, in several weeks, and I still hadn't made a decision. And then I remember talking to John Huster. I said, he was like, go on the trip. But he didn't realize something. School would already be started when I got back. So it was, the trip was already would be a weekend when school started. So that would be kind of a tough transition. And then I think I realized at that point that I don't think I'm going anywhere. So I went to, I'm not really sure actually that it came to that. Maybe there might have been some chance of leaving. But when I went overseas, we played and I had to start. I had to play because I think a couple of guys were hurt and they didn't go on the trip. Or it might have been one that was still hurt. So, I started during the whole time and I always had great summers. And I think I played well. And coach saw that. And I think we kind of build that confidence in each other together. And so when I got back, I started my junior year, and then was able, I had some inconsistencies and so forth. Sometimes, anxiety would creep back in. I don't know if it was panic attacks or whatever. It might have been. It was more in my head than anywhere else. So it will, to continually work through that on occasions that, that would come back. But I thought, I had a pretty good junior year, and then obviously the senior year was even more spectacular.
Do you remember where that trip was to overseas?
Yeah. I still remember. We went to Greece, Germany, and I can't remember. It was one more spot, but it was a great tournament in Greece. Tel Aviv team played, and they had some of the old NBA players there. I think I don't know if we were like 5,500 during the trip or we came up a few games ahead. But it was a great trip, great experience for me.
That you would have taken Ronnie Cycli over with you, and Greg Monroe and Sherman Douglas. Or...
Yeah, all those guys came. We actually went to Ronnie's house. What was funny is that he lived near where all the ambassadors and so forth lived, and I think we were invited. We went to dinner. We went to dinner and had dinner at his house, and he showed us a DJ booth he had in the back in his basement, which was funny because now he's a DJ, and none of us are surprised because we kind of knew that, but didn't know to the extent that he was. So it's funny, we crack up like Sonny Spare and and guys, we crack up about that now. If we, maybe he took it more serious than we thought. He had his own little thing, his equipment in the back. I remember going around the back of his house, and it was kind of under the house, and it was a little studio that he had, and he was, house music junkie.
How about that? The beginnings of his DJ career back then. Yeah. And also, like you said, it's the beginning of what's going to be your last 2 years are going to be completely different than your first two.
Yeah.
You started every single game, junior and senior year. Mm-hmm. You become a fixture in that lineup. One thing I wanted to ask you about is at the end of your junior year, Pearl leaves. Mm-hmm. How much confidence, or what was the feeling then with him leaving and a young Sherman Douglas on the roster who really hadn't played a whole lot as a freshman? What were your thoughts regarding the transition there at point guard? Were you high on Sherman?
Oh yeah, Sherman. When you're in practice and you're playing with the guys, and his tenaciousness, and he's a warrior. He won't back down. He might, and he was even smaller, than he is now. When he, in college, he was probably, 160 maybe or something like that. He was is 5'10" or 5'11", probably not 6 foot.
Which is what they listed him at.
Yeah. But he was, he had, moves, you never knew when he was shooting a shot or was doing an alley-oop. And he kind of perfected that. And we would always see that, and he would always go head to head with Dwayne. He didn't let up on Dwayne. And, they had some scuffles here and there, and that's how that's when someone's ready, they're not going to back down. And then Sherman came onto his own that junior year. And, one thing I noticed more so my junior year about Sherman, and I knew he was going to be a professional, he was the only guy that paid attention to the film. I mean, really paid attention to the film where he's asking questions, what about this? And what about, I said, when it was, I don't know if you remember when he was coming out his senior year, it's questioned whether he would make the league or not. And I would always say, just because of that, he's going to make it. Those are the things that, what are you doing that someone else is not doing to give you an advantage? And that's one of those things that I always contribute to Sherman, as doing something that no one else is doing to that degree. I knew that because that shows his commitment and understanding of the game. And that's what you need as a point guard. And I think that served him well playing in the NBA.
Oh, and yeah, my first year on the beat was his senior year. And I was amazed at watching him run the point, because by then, as a senior, he was fully in control. He was in charge of everything on the floor.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions of Derek Coleman?
Oh, man. They always had a chip on his shoulder, I think. And I think that served him well. They have that confidence and his ability. And wherever he got that chip from, it came out in the games or in practice and so forth. All the guys really just want to have fun and enjoy their time there, and not take things too serious. Because that helps you relax, and then the games and so forth. Derek wanted to win. That's bottom line. He wanted to win, and he would say or do whatever so he could win.
Yeah, I know that chip on the shoulder well. He sometimes brought it to interviews.
Well, and from his standpoint, I think he said it before that college was the best years of his life. And, him looking back and he appreciate things. And I think we all do, knowing what we know now, when we look back, is that we appreciate things a lot more that went through and what people did to help us and assist us. We might not have understood it all the time at the time it was going on, but in reflection, and I'm sure Derek will tell you that, there's people there that helped him, and he had a great experience. It wasn't all business, right? It was when you're out to have fun. And that's basically it. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to him now, NBA was work.
What was the team's attitude, or, what was your expectations going into your senior year?
Me and Greg were the next 3-point shooters. I mean, from my standpoint, it was, I didn't really shoot many 3-pointers. And I think that was the first year that there were, I just remember the 3-point line coming of age. And I was, I'm trying to, I think we were kind of high in the Big East of finishing. I remember me and Greg as captains going down to the Big East, for the reporters or whatever.
Oh, the preseason media day?
Preseason, yeah. Meeting and so forth, and going down and talking. I learned a lot from that, from just the questions that people were asking. I didn't know what we were, but they were asking these questions. So I guess I learned about what we were going to be, and those were the things that came up, and those were the questions that were asked about, but mostly a lot about the 3-point line and so forth. And I probably taken my senior year maybe 5 threes, and probably most of them were last second shots, that you just throw up. I was always the kind of guy that, the closer you can shoot, the more higher percentage you would get. So it made sense. And no need to shoot as far out. And not that I couldn't, it was just so much easier in the way I played that I was able to get closer. So
when did that team, or when did you personally begin to think we have a shot to go all the way?
It's funny you asked that. Let's see. So the start of the tournament, I think I remember saying I wanted to play, and it probably was a question that was asked similar to what you're asking. I said, I want to play the last game. My mistake was not saying I wanted to win the last game. So my goal was already shot. It already shot down.
You have to be
I reflect
specific.
on that every now and then. I was like, God, I had the wrong goal. Yeah, I played the last game, but what about winning the last game? I think I remember talking to Bernie. He says it's up to Ronnie. Ronnie's got to play well for us to do that.
That's interesting, because Ronnie did.
It was up to Ronnie, because sometimes Ronnie, he would start reading newspaper articles, and then that would be it. We know we needed to get him the ball initially, get a couple of baskets, and then, he'd play better defense. He was a great athlete, even, first coming in. He was raw from basketball, but, he was always athletic, and, he worked hard to get where he was by his senior year. And he had a great pro career. But I don't think, I think once Providence beat Georgetown, I think we had, because Georgetown had our number that year, I think, but Providence, we had Providence number. So, but, we had beat them 3 times, I believe, prior to. And then the odds are like, oh, gee, things start running through your head. Well, it's tough to beat somebody 4 times. But but I think around then is when Providence beat Georgetown, I think. And I think we had beat North Carolina or the game before that. I can't remember totally, but I think that's when I thought we could win.
Well, going back to what you said about Ronnie, in the Sweet 16, you beat Florida with Dwayne Cincius, an All-American center for Florida.
Yeah.
And then, in the Elite Eight, you beat North Carolina, which had J.R. Reed.
Mm-hmm. And Kenny Smith.
Scott Williams.
Yeah, they had a great team.
Another big guy.
Yeah.
So anyway,
we matched up well against them. I think the matchups were well. I think I might have had an advantage being more of a moving small forward than I can't remember if it was Wolf or one of the other guys. I can't remember totally, but they're 3-man. But he was bigger and slower, I think. So we had more of an advantage. More dynamic, when we played man. I was sick of a dog that game. I think, I think a lot of times when people are sick or players, they just play, and that, nothing else goes through their mind. They're just playing. I mean, you can count how many players saying they were sick and what great games they had. And that was one of, I kept asking coach to take me out. He wouldn't take me out. I was dying. I had, it was the cold or the flu, cold or something. I could barely breathe, and it carried over actually into Final Four too. I was sick, and I think by the last game I might have been feeling better. But
all right, so we got to jump to the championship game.
yeah.
You weren't specific at the start of the tournament, so you made the final game, but there's no guarantee about winning. What are your memories? What stands out when you think back to that game against Indiana?
Oh, we didn't want to play UNLV. I thought our matchup on UNLV might not have been the greatest. I thought we matched up better with Indiana, and I thought we had a solid plan going into the game. Not let Steve Alford shoot.
Yeah, good plan.
So it didn't work out well the first half. He had 7 threes, record, it probably still stands. And I don't know, what happened. He's running off screens and so on. If nobody could, it's like nobody could stay with him or we were, I think, playing zone man, that first half. And I just remember other things, getting called for some ghost fouls. I mean, I think I wasn't even on the one side of the court and they called a foul on me. So I think I was in foul trouble, I think, the first half or somewhere around there. I remember sitting and like, what the world is going on? I remember 2 fouls that were just, wasn't even near the person and they called them on me. If I ever see those refs again. But, these are just kind of excerpts and things that kind of remember that kind of stuck out. I think defensively we played pretty good other than, controlling Alfred from that standpoint. I think our offense was pretty steady going along, except for, fouls when I came out. I really wanted to play it as much as possible in that game. And then, the first half went out. I didn't realize he had that many threes the first half. And coach was pissed, to say the least. Then we came out second half and we had some different defensive strategies, triangle and 2, diamond and 1. I think we were kind of using on Alfred and so forth. But he didn't score in the second half, I don't believe. So that part worked. And then, but another guy, I don't know what happened. Well, I do know now what happened, but I didn't know at the time what happened with Keith Smart come second half.
Tell us what happened.
So I learned after, we did a podcast several months ago, and that was one of the questions I asked. I was like, it's like you were possessed the second half. What in the world happened? He said, Coach Knight told him he needed to play or else he wasn't going to be there next year. Because I could never understand how, motivated someone came out in the second half, how quick and, explosive he was. And, he just took everything. He was going up over Ronnie. I mean, he was just kind of everywhere on the court, and the recruiting, the stats on him was that he wasn't a shooter, could shoot. So, that all, I mean, I listened to that and I understood, going in, it was an important game and who was the shooters and who not to. And, he just came out really explosive. And that was important to, it's kind of understanding what really was going on in his mind and what was going on and the transition and so forth in the games, because that was always a question to me. I thought maybe he was on drugs or something that came out. Like, did they drug test him? But it was, Coach Knight knew how to motivate. He definitely motivated Keith. And we were kind of going, back and forth, and it was tight. It was funny. It was about, I think Derek was on the free throw line. I was at center court either with Greg or Sherman. And I said, hey, we can win this game. And that was like the first realization, thinking that we had a chance to win. And then Then we didn't.
And then we didn't.
I think it was about 2 minutes left at the time.
Oh, so it was not the last one.
I think we were up three or four at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just came to me that, hey, we could win this. We could win this game. I thought we were playing pretty good from a offense standpoint. And, but Keys was Swiss cheesing us on defense. And he was really the only one really scoring, I think, in last few minutes of the game. We missed a couple of one-on-ones. I think I made the first and missed the second. Derek missed the front end, and I think Keith got it, actually went all the way to the other end and scored. And then we kind of transitioned. How the end went was, I think we were in triangle and two. I was at the top of the triangle, and the ball was moving around on the outside, and it went into their big man, which I forget if it was Garrett. So I doubled down helping Ronnie, and he kicked it back out to Keith. Keith I think took one dribble or dotted to the end line. Went up. I'm thinking, hey, that's what we want. We want him to shoot a jump shot.
Right.
Yeah, because he's not a shooter. So I just put my hand up from a contest standpoint, and he made it, and that kind of devastated us all. And I think we weren't sure if we had timeouts left, and I think that was kind of our lapse because we allowed maybe 12 seconds to go off the clock before we ended up calling a timeout, or we did call a timeout. The refs didn't see me. I can't remember because I remember holding up my hand, but I'm looking around and nobody else is saying timeout. I took my hand down, like, oh, maybe we don't have timeouts. Then we finally, called timeout, and I think we had 4 or 5 seconds left.
We got a little bit less than a minute left, Howard.
Yeah.
That was a brutal loss. Are you over it, or does it still stick in your craw?
I always say one day we're going to win that game, and I think the 2003 championship was that. When I wasn't on the team, but it was in the same place, similar situations. I just knew we were going to win. It was just that redemption, and that was the redemption, I think, that happened. Everybody always say, we didn't lose, we ran out of time. So
yeah,
the time extended to there.
Well,
so that's
we're about to
maybe
run
in
out
some
of time
parallel
too.
universe we won. I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time here too. But I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. This was a lot of fun. It flew by.